did last time. Last time we talked kind of an overview of the life of Christ, and we began to look at some of the geography.
Is that the Wild Wild West Bank?
Yeah.
That's Jerusalem in the center there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. It's on the Jordan River.
Dan, John Dolan, Dan.
So basically,
I'm on double secret probation.
yeah.
John Dolan.
All right, basically it said there are 5 phases of the life of Christ. By the way, you'll all have a lot of this stuff in a notebook you'll be given, but I want you to set you up because a lot of you haven't been to our training. So those 5 phases be listed. But here's what I want you to remember. Basically, it said there are 5 phases in the life of Christ. The first phase was a preparation phase, the first 30 years. On this map of Israel, roughly where was the first 30 years of Jesus' life? Yeah, up in
Nazareth.
the Galilee, Nazareth. Okay, Nazareth is right here. This is where he grew up. So it was up in the Galilean area, first 30 years. Okay. Then we said phase 2 was ministry foundation. He was baptized. He launched his ministry. And you remember where the next 18 months or a year and a half of Jesus' ministry, phase 2, ministry foundation, where was that primarily in this map? Do you remember?
Jericho and Bethany.
Yes, it was around down in this area, Judea, Samaria area. Now a trip up to Cana, a trip to the Passover, trip to Capernaum. But it was predominantly for almost 1/2 of his ministry flying under the radar of John the Baptist, was the Billy Graham of his day. Calling people, saying, come and see and follow me. Starting to invest in people. But that was down in this area, okay? He spent time with his disciples, John 3:22. So phase 2 was primarily down in this area, as best we can determine anyway. Now phase 3 was ministry training phase, and we labeled that 18 months into it because Jesus now goes to 5 individuals. He says, follow me, I will what? Make you fishers of men. I'm going to train you to reproduce your life motive. I'm going to train you to impart your life to others. That's what I call ministry training phase. These are not the 12 yet, but it was the 5. And so that then launched, he moved from his hometown to another town. Where did he move from to? Do you remember? He moved from Nazareth to Capernaum. Yeah, and Capernaum was like the Louisville, Kentucky, the Chicago, Illinois. There was the Indianapolis of Indiana, the populated area. He set up his training site there, and from that point on, his ministry was done in the Evangelical Triangle, Capernaum, Bethsaida, and Chorazin, where he did 80% of his ministry in a little area no bigger than Louisville. Okay? So that was it. Third phase was the Galilean phase of Jesus' ministry. So he started around the Nazareth area, Lower Galilee, moved to the Judea wilderness, then the Galilean ministry up here for the next 9 months, and then that was phase 3 and 4, and then phase 5 was 2.5 years into it. He chooses 12, and remember that was surprising to some of us. He chose 12 disciples to be with him, and he called them apostles, and I call this the leadership team of his movement. It was made them apostles. They became the leaders of the movement. And for the next year and a half, he poured into those 12, and 17 times at the masses, but 46 times with those few. And so where was that? What region was that? You remember the last year and a half of Jesus' ministry, year and a quarter? It was predominantly around this area. He went over to Tyre, he went up to Caesarea Philippi, and we'll be up to Caesarea Philippi, and then he came down through Perea, called the Perean ministry, to make his way to Jerusalem. Now, again, the only reason I want you to know that, just get a sense. Started 30 years in Nazareth, then the Judean wilderness, and we'll be down in an area, and we'll talk about that second phase. Then his Galilean ministry in that Evangelical Triangle would be at those places, and then his area of ministry around it after he chooses 12, and because he couldn't stay in those areas because the crowds were so big, so he didn't make trips out. And then his Perean ministry, which was 9 months, believe it or not, moving toward Jerusalem to die on the cross. And this was the thousands upon thousands of that place. So that's the kind of geography, big picture geography of the life of Christ, a 4-year ministry of Jesus. Okay, so again, you don't have to remember all that. You'll have that in your notebook. I want you to be familiar with it because we'll talk about it when we're over there. Now, what I want to do tonight, though, is I want to really talk about just focus on the city of Jerusalem. So we're going to zero in on that because, again, I mentioned it last time. It took me so long to figure out the city. because it's so different from what I expected, and I had confused ideas about it. And so here's what I want to do. I'm going to frame it up. I'm going to frame it up 3 areas. We're going to look at the hills of Jerusalem. We're going to look at the history of Jerusalem, and then we'll look at the walls of Jerusalem. Okay? So those are the 3 areas kind of help us understand this. Now, by the way, I forgot to do something right here. We did not get to last time, and I felt this is important. You have in there the worksheet under Herod the Great. Okay, we did not get to it, the Herods of the Bible. You see that worksheet in there? Mm-hmm. Okay, here's what I'm going to do, just to kind of open it up. I want to talk a little bit about the Herods, because this can be so confusing when you read the scripture about the Herods. What do you know about the Herods in the Bible? And again, I'm not trying to stump anybody, but what do you remember about the Herods in the Bible?
In general, they were very cruel men.
Okay, in general, they're very cruel men, especially some. There's one that wasn't, but we'll talk about him a little bit. So basically cruel.
Pagan.
Okay, very pagan. They're rulers. They're ruling for Rome. So they were ruling for Rome. What else do you know about the Herods? What's that?
Weren't they Jewish?
Herod the Great was half Jewish, half
They were playing
Idumean.
both sides.
Yeah, they had to play both sides because they were politicians being funded by Rome to control the Jewish people. And so the best ones would be those are half and half. Okay? What else do we know? Do you remember any stories with them? Okay, who killed the babies? Herod the Great. Okay, Herod the Great, and Herod the Great was the father. Okay, and that's why a lot of people get confused because there's a lot of Herods in the Bible, and you see the lineage there. You got Herod Antipas, you got Herod Philippi, and then you have Herod Agrippa, and then Agrippa I and Agrippa II in the book of Acts. And so you read them and you think they're all the same. They're not. They're not. They're very different. So let me just kind of big picture for this and show you how this fits in geography, because it really helps us understand the life of Christ too. So Herod the Great was the father. Yeah, Dana?
Is Herod a title or a name?
It's kind of I think it's both. That's a good question. I'd have to do we can ask our tour guide, Andre. But I think it's both. I think it's both a name, because Herod Antipas, Herod Agrippa, Herod... So I think it'd be both.
They were all related, weren't
They were, because Herod the Great was the father, and he has 3 sons.
they? Right.
Okay, so let's talk about Herod the Great. Now we know he killed the babies. So he's the one, remember when Jesus went down to Bethlehem, an angel appeared to Joseph, get out of town? And he came, because the wise men came, and he had the meeting with them. We'll talk about those 2 meetings he had in the city of Jerusalem. Where is this Messiah? I want to go worship him. And then he sent the soldiers out to kill everybody 2 years or under, which we'll talk about that, but I'm convinced that proof Jesus was about 18 months old when this happened, not a baby like a lot of the Christmas stories tell. Because he knew that the exact time he was born, and so he said kill everybody 2 years and under. So he killed, and most people think that was in this area is probably 20 to 40 babies, estimate, but it's still much crying and weeping. And Jesus escaped that because the angel appeared to Joseph to get out of town. That's Herod. Herod the Great was known as a builder and a butcher. And the older he got, the more evil he became. And we'll go down, let's start builder first. Herod became the ruler of this in 37 before Jesus was born. Jesus was born about 6 BC. And if you got questions about that, that's something else we can talk about later on. But he was born about 6 BC. Herod lived to 4 BC. Okay, so Herod died 2 years roughly after Jesus born, somewhere around that. When he died down his favorite place down in Jericho. They had a procession all the way up to the Herodian in Bethlehem. We'll stand on Herodian. And Josephus, who's a historian, said he was buried there. They couldn't find the grave, couldn't find it. They said Josephus, the historian, must have been wrong, but they just found it 5 years ago. And so they're building a big tomb there, and there's a massive display of that. But he was a builder. And why was he a builder? Because Rome wouldn't let him expand. So he took all the money, and this area was quite wealthy during that time, very prosperous, I think a lot like it is now, and they couldn't expand, so he built. He built 9 incredible palaces. We'll see 5 of those 9. They're still here after 2,000 years. Now, Jericho's just ruins because it's made out of a lot of sand, but we'll see the sand ruins. But we'll stop. We're going to land in Joppa. We'll go up to Caesarea Maritime. We'll see what he built up there. Did you guys, who went with Dave Stone before, did you go to Caesarea Maritime? He built a port out in the Mediterranean that surpassed all ports of that day, and he did it by telling his builders we're going to do it because it was swampland, and they never had underwater cement, but his builders figured out a way to do it. Unbelievable. This is where Paul spent 2 years in prison, and this is where Herod Agrippa talked with Paul, okay, in the book of Acts. So you can see the chronology there, okay. So he built Caesarea Maritime. He had a palace here. He had a palace Jericho. He had Herodian. Masada. Y'all went and saw Masada. Those of you have been over. Most people go to Masada. We'll be there. And he built Masada. Unbelievable builder. His Herodian was the third most elegant building in the world, next to 1 or 2 places in Rome. So he's now a builder, but then at the end of his life he became paranoid and he was killing everybody. He killed his own sons, killed his wife, because he felt that, you know, when he just about died down here in Jericho, his oldest son, who had been a great ruler, began to take over. Everybody thought his dad was dead. His dad revived, heard that his son took over, had his son killed immediately on the spot, and then he died a couple days later. So just a real nice guy, builder and butcher. But that's Herod the Great. But then Herod the Great had 3 sons. Now here's where it comes important to the life of Christ. Herod had 3 sons. One of them was Herod Archelaus, and he was given this area by Rome. Now, by the way, you got a Bible with you. Some of you, I encourage you to bring them. Do you remember the story in Luke 19? And Luke 19 is, some of you know the story, but you've never connected the dots. Luke 19, Jesus is talking about, he says, while they were listening to this, Luke 19:11, while they were listening to this, he went on to tell them a parable because he was near Jerusalem, and the people thought that the kingdom of God was going to appear at once. He said, a man of noble birth went away to a distant country to have himself appointed king and then return. So he called 10 of his servants and gave them 10 minas, put the money to work, and when I come back, until I come back. His subjects hated him and sent a delegation after him saying, we don't want this man to become our king. Now this Jesus was coming on his way up to Jerusalem to be crucified. He's relating it to himself. They don't want me to be their king. But he was also, it was a parable because that's exactly how it happened with one of Herod's sons, Herod Archelaus. He went over to Rome to ask to be able to rule this area, and the people sent a delegation behind Herod Archelaus. Said, we don't want him, we don't want him. Rome gave him, and he reigned this for 10 years, but he was worse than Herod the Great. So that parable, when Jesus gave it, had a double meaning. And they were connecting it both to Herod Archelaus and to Jesus, which it did apply to. Okay, that's the parable of town, and he said that on the way out. Now, so he ruled here for 10 years. But remember when Joseph came back from Egypt, an angel appeared to him down in Egypt, said, safe to go back. And they headed back to where? Bethlehem. But the angel said, don't go there. Go back. So he went back to Nazareth. Now, you can speculate why. But again, we know it's Herod Archelaus because he was a bad ruler. So God protected baby Jesus again. Because Herod Archelaus was worse than his dad, Herod. Now, then the second son was Herod Antipas. He ruled Galilee. Now, we're going to see this when we're over this, and you'll appreciate this more, and we'll probably talk about it more over there, because Herod Antipas is called that fox. Herod Antipas was the one who beheaded? John the Baptist. Herod Antipas ruled from Tiberias. Herod Antipas was the one who always wanted to meet Jesus because he heard about all his miracles, because he did hear about all his miracles. And because that was his area. Jesus was right in his area. And remember, Herod Antipas became a friend of Pilate when they decided together and plotted together to kill Jesus up in Jerusalem. Remember Jesus, it says, I don't have time to read the passage, but he became a friend. Pilate became a friend to Herod Antipas. They hated each other, but they became friends over killing Jesus, which is a lot of the world over there. A lot of the Muslims hate each other, and so they unified together to kill the Jews. So, but that was a picture of what that was Herod. And now, and this is important because when we're over there, we'll be on this side. See, and we'll read a couple stories that said Jesus said we must go to the other side. Or he told his disciples, you go to the other side. Well, what's the other side? The other side is this region up here where Herod Philip, the third son, ruled. And that was the safe side. That's where Bethsaida was, on this side of the Jordan. And so whenever it got too politically tense, Jesus said his disciples, get to the other side. It's safer over there. And so that's Herod Philip. And so we'll talk about that, where most of Jesus' disciples were from. And he sent them to the other side where it was safe. And then the last region is Decapolis. Decapolis stands for 10. It's 10 what? 10 cities in the Decapolis region that were pagan cities. Now, so you got pagan, you got Herod Philip. And remember, Herod Antipas married Herod Philip's wife, and that's what John the Baptist was condemning. So imagine being brothers took somebody else's wife, and John the Baptist said that's not right, so that's why he got beheaded. I mean, and they're right across the border, right across the Jordan. Well, we'll be in back and forth. And so, and then you got this whole area later on became ruled by Pilate after Herod Archelaus was moved because he was such a bad leader. It was so tense in the days of Jesus, politically, geographically. So tense. Because you got Romans, you got Jews, you got brothers that can't stand each other, you got the pagans. It was so tense. Kind of like it is today. Really. We've taken a lot of younger leaders over there, and one of the number one things our guys out of Eastern Europe said when they came back, says, many times we make an excuse we can't do ministry in Eastern Europe because it's so politically tense. And yet Jesus faced the same thing. That should not be stopping us from making disciples. So you got it. Okay, so that's just a kind of big picture. We didn't get to that last time. You can look at the charts here. Okay, now let's dive into what we're going to talk about now. History of Jerusalem. How are we doing? Okay? Let's just look at this area. First off, we're going to just start. I want us to look at, we've done that review. Oh, by the way, I should have showed you these. I worked so hard to make this work. But those are the areas, regions of the different phases, if you can see that. And we just did that. So let's go to the history of Jerusalem. Talk to me about that. Well, what was Jerusalem first called? Salem. Who was? And Salem means peace. Do you recognize that name? Who is from Salem? Melchizedek, the king of peace. Now, do you remember the story of Melchizedek? What happened with Melchizedek and Abraham?
Abraham gave him 10%.
Yeah, okay. If you got a Bible, I want you to just look at this, because this is so cool. Genesis 14. Genesis 14. And you know this story, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of context, because a lot of people have not connected this with the city of Jerusalem. So Genesis 14, 17. I'll just read it. I was going to have somebody read it, but I'll just read it. After Abraham returned, I should have had somebody else read it because this has got a lot of big words. After Abraham returned from defeating and the kings allied around him, the king of Sodom came out to meet Abraham in the valley of Shavah. That is the king's valley. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He is priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abraham, saying, Blessed be Abraham by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abraham gave him 1/10 of everything. The king of Sodom said to Abraham, Give me a people and keep the goods for yourself. And Abraham said to the king of Sodom, I've raised my hand to the God Lord, my God Lord. The first time the word Elohim is used right there. Melchizedek had a major impact upon Abraham. And Melchizedek helped Abraham see the God, that his God, and he worshipped that God. He used the word for the first time, and he refused the king of Sodom. The king of Sodom was the king of this world. The king of Melchizedek was the righteous king. And that's why the book of Hebrews says he was a type of Christ. And so here Abraham tithed to the king of Jerusalem. It was Salem, king of peace, but it was a type and a picture of the coming king Jesus who's going to rule and reign out of this city. So it started as Salem, and Abraham tied to it. Then the Jebusites conquered it, and it was called the city of Jebus. It was an alien city with no Israelites. This was Jebus, but remember, this city was so well fortified, when David came into the land, you remember this story? David came into the land, and David said to his rulers, his soldiers, whoever can get behind the walls of this city, I'll make him commander of my army. Do you remember who it was that climbed through the shaft, up the water thing, got behind the walls, opened the gates, and David conquered? And remember, this city was mocking David, says, our lame and blind could defeat you, David. Nobody can conquer this city because we're so well fortified. David, being a good Jewish person, had great intelligence. Like they do today, Israelis have great intelligence. He found where the water shaft was, convinced his men to go underground, up this now called worm shaft, climbed up on the backside, opened the gates, and they went in. Remember who that ruler was? Anybody know? This is in 1 Samuel 5. I'm not going to read it. I probably should read it. 1 Samuel 5, 6 to 9 if you want to read it. Remember who that ruler was that became the leader of David's army? I know you know it. Joab. Joab became the leader of David's army because he climbed up the shaft behind the wall. And David conquered this city called Jebus. And therefore it was called the city of David from that point on. Now, 1 Chronicles 15, he moved the ark there, and we'll stop at where the ark was. Beit Shemesh on our way. But he moved the ark from Beit Shemesh to Jerusalem, or the city of David. And then in 1 Chronicles 17, you know the story. David, he said, I'm living in a palace. But God's still in the tabernacle. I want to build a what for God?
Temple.
A temple for God. And God, Nathan said to David, what?
No.
No. Your heart is good. God is pleased with your request, but you're a man of blood. You can't do it. But you prepare. You prepare for your son to do it. And who built the first temple then? Solomon did. But David amassed, by today's standards, $30 billion of gold alone to prepare to build this massive temple that for the God of the universe. And that's in 1 Chronicles 17. But God said to David, David, I'm pleased with your request, but I'm not going to let you do it. Your son will do it. You make preparation. But David, you will rule and reign forever. And in 1 Samuel 17 is the Davidic covenant. And the Davidic covenant says there will be a priestly reign of the tribe of David that will rule forever from this place. And that's Jesus, the line of David, the seed of David. David was born in Bethlehem. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. That's not accident. Okay? Because the fulfillment of the Davidic covenant given to David of the ruling. Again, I'm telling you stuff you know, but I want to connect them back. And then it began to call Jerusalem. We call it Jerusalem. Because it was, and that's what it's called today. Okay, so that's just a little bit of history. Any quick questions or comments? Or something you know a lot more than I do maybe on that, or something you were wondering or thinking, or... And somebody say, what difference does that make? Maybe it doesn't, but I think it does. Any questions about that? Okay, let's do one more thing then. Well, by the way, let me show you this picture. Can you all see that? I know it's small. I couldn't get a bit... this is the city of Jerusalem in the time of David. Now, see this little cone. I want you to remember that cone. We're going to talk a lot about that cone. This little cone is the city of David, okay? And up above here is the mountain, and that's called Mount Moriah. What else happened in Mount Moriah? Abraham offered up Isaac. This is where the temple was built. David bought the threshing floor, the whole Temple Mount. When you can connect those dots, Abraham offered up Isaac there. That's where the Temple Mount, that's all the conflict right now, and the Dome of Rock sits. But the city of David is not all of Jerusalem. The city of David in time of David is a little cone. Now I want to show you that in just a little bit. This is a picture, artist rendition of the city of David. This is really during the time of Nehemiah, because Nehemiah builds a wall around it, but imagine this wall being gone. It's just like a tongue coming down a hill. Now, why this was so strategic? Because, remember that psalm that says, as the mountains surround Jerusalem? So, I was surrounded, honey, can you look that up? 125, do you have a Bible?
I don't have it down there.
I want you, because I want you to see it, because we'll see this one over there, but Psalm 125, here it is. Psalm 125. Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be shaken but endure forever. As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people both now and forevermore. So this is a little tongue coming down. But on this side's the Mount of Olives, on this side's another mountain, and the mountains surround this place. And say, well, you never build a strategic city in the lowlands. You would in this city, because this is the Kidron Valley, which is 60 feet deep. This is the Hinnom Valley where Judas hung himself. So this was very strategic with a water source right here, and David's men creep to that water source. And sometime when I take you over there, and some of you on your free time, you can walk through Hezekiah's Tunnel. Have you ever heard about Hezekiah's Tunnel? Hezekiah's Tunnel is about a mile wide. Hezekiah, to spare the city later on now, built this underground thing to move water over here to the Pool of Siloam. So that they had water when the Syrians attacked and God slayed the 185,000. They did it right here, and it's underground. And I love to take younger leaders. We walk through the Hezekiah's Tunnel. You have to bend over. Water still comes this high after 2,000 years or 3,000 years of water still flowing through there. It was an unbelievable, genius construction project. They started from two sides and met in the middle. And the slant is so perfect, it flows from here about a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile over to here, because it's just goes downhill, just a little bit. It's just unbelievably genius project. They don't know how he does that. Starting from two sides and meeting in the middle. But that's right at the water source here, where David's men slipped up and conquered the city. Okay? This is all covered with Arab towns right now, Arab homes, but they're buying more and more of it as they can. If an Arab sells to the Jewish people, they take big bucks. The Jews pay big bucks to buy this because they want to buy this whole city of David back. But they have to get out of the country and go under disguise because they would be dead for selling to Jewish people. But that's some of the conflict going on. Okay, and so, but this is the city, what it looks like. Again, notice the tongue shape. Now here, again, here's another map. And again, somebody say, what does this make sense? Well, trust me, you will. This is the tongue. Okay, and this is the city of David. The city of David was relatively small, but this is Jerusalem all around it. And then this is the Temple Mount up here, where Solomon built the temple, which we'll see the Dome of the Rock. And this is the present day walls in Jerusalem of the old city. Okay, so that's the city of David, that little town. Okay, now that was what David conquered. Now this is also called the city of the great king, the holy city, the city of God, the city of righteousness, the city of truth, the joy of the whole earth. Interesting titles for this, isn't it? The Lord is there. Ariel, the city of God, the hearth of God. Zion, my holy hill. These are just God's thoughts toward this place. The city the Lord has chosen. That's why it's one of my 5 top cities in the whole world. I travel a lot, and it's the top of the 5, because it's the city the Lord has chosen. God's city, his holy city. I, God, have chosen Jerusalem for my name to be there forever. Now, if you don't know this, we're going to talk about prophecy next time, but I'm convinced that's where Jesus is going to rule and reign for at least 1,000 years. From Jerusalem. Ezekiel 5:5, the epicenter of the whole world. Christ ascended into heaven from there, and he's coming back there. And so we're going to be there. Okay? Make sense? How are we doing?
Great.
All right? Am I putting you to sleep? No? You would? Okay.
Good stuff.
I get excited about this, but I don't want to bore you with stuff I'm excited about. Now, let's talk about then the walls of Jerusalem. Again, I'm just trying to help you prepare for what we're going to see, and we'll reiterate.
Dan,
Yes.
is there any way you could move the podium, maybe lower it a little bit?
There you go. I
Is
don't
it
know
your way
if
now?
they can see it. Maybe just lower it. There you go.
Yeah, you just don't want me to see my notes. Okay, all right. Okay. Okay, now let's just talk about the walls of Jerusalem, because this is going to be really confusing to people, all right? The typical, and this is one of my favorite pictures. I remember standing on the Mount of Olives, taking this picture. You're looking westward toward Jerusalem, and this is the Temple Mount here, okay? And we're going to talk about this. But this Temple Mount goes up this way, and there's a wall, and it comes back here, and it goes all around this old city, comes way back down here. These walls, called the walls of Jerusalem today, you'll see those walls. We'll walk through most of those gates, the different gates of Jerusalem. But those walls were built in 1500. So they're only 600 years old, 500 years old. Okay? They're not the original walls of Jerusalem, but parts of them are. Parts of them are. So we're going to look at that. But let me show you first off the walls. Now this map, and you'll have this, you've got this in your thing if you can't see it up here to look at in your notes. But everybody got notes, right? No. Okay. Oh.
I didn't give up.
I worked so hard on this already.
Hey, Shar, you married.
I'm so sorry. My wife is rolling her eyes back there.
Do you have any leftovers from last week?
She got it.
Pardon?
Notes from last week, do you have any?
I do. If you email me, I'll send you from last week.
got it.
Okay, I'll make sure you get it. But, okay, I'm so sorry.
We shared.
Thanks for sharing.
We can go back from memory and fill in the blanks if you were taking. Some of you are not. Okay, okay. Okay, you have this map there if you can't see it here. So, still got, still some going out. We have enough. We need about 45, I think.
I'm sorry, can we start? I got it right.
The sad thing is, I can celebrate everybody else. Okay. All right, so this is a kind of a combination map of the walls of Jerusalem. Now, you won't understand all this until you begin to see it, but I wanted to frame it up that when we stand for the first time on the Mount of Olives and begin to talk this, hopefully by the end of this trip, with a good tour guide that they can see the trip, you can get this when you leave. It took me about 7-8 trips to figure all this out, but I'm slower than most. This is the city of David. See, that's the tongue. It's a little hill. Now, I'll show you some pictures of that, but I showed you some already. It's a small part, okay? Then this is the Temple Mount, okay? Up above it, because remember, Abraham bought the threshing floor, purchased it, and built Solomon's temple there. And then Ezra and Nehemiah's temple. We'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about Mount Moriah. So then the city began to expand, and the walls grew up here. And then the city kind of grew out this way. This yellow part is the walls during the time of Jesus. Okay? And it's just like a city today. As people come to the city, they live outside the walls in those days. Then they go inside the wall for protection. But as the city grew, and they came under threat, they expand the walls. Okay? And so this yellow part is the walls in the time of Jesus. And then now, this part here is the present day walls. If you see that black line, this is the walls that are there, built in the 15th century by Solomon the Magnificent, okay, the Turkish ruler. A lot of these are the same walls, some are not. But here's one of the things that tends to confuse a lot of people when we look at this. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is now in the Old City. The Old City is roughly right here. Church of the Holy Sepulchre is in the walls of the Old City. But in the time of Jesus, it was outside of the walls of the city. And that's hard for people to figure out because now it's inside the walls, but these are the walls of Solomon the Magnificent. And another example, the upper room. We'll go in the upper room, and we'll see the city, Tomb of David and upper room. That is outside of the present city, but in the time of Jesus, it was inside the walls. And the upper room, and they walked down to the Garden of Gethsemane. So, if you just understand the concept, the walls we will see when we get there or a lot of the walls are not the ones in the time of Jesus. Some of them are, some are not. So those are the different expansion of the wall. Now, let me just play off of that. I like this picture. I'm sorry you can't see it better, but this is a picture from the west looking east. Here's the Temple Mount. What's this called?
Dome of the Rock.
The Dome of the Rock. Is that a temple? No, it's a shrine. Here's the Alaska Mosque that's up there. This Temple Mount is a huge platform we're going to talk about. It's 35 acres built by Herod the Great to appease the Jewish people. I'll show you how that's fit in a little bit, but we'll come back to that later. But down here is that tongue, okay? So when we're standing up here in Mount Olives, look down on the Dome Rock and see this big platform. Right down below it is a tongue. That is the city of David. Okay, that's the city of David. The original city. Small. It's really small. Okay? Jerusalem's all around it. And this is the present wall going around it. Right here is the Jaffa Gate down here, where we often stay when we take young leaders over. This is the Jaffa Gate. But this is the present day wall. But in the time of Jesus, the wall came like here, came all the way down and around. Okay? Now, but this Temple Mount, just get a little bit of picture of the magnitude of that compared to the city of David. The temple that Solomon built was magnificent. And then the temple that Herod expanded later on was magnificent. Okay, let me just show you another picture from the other direction. I'm sorry this is not bigger, but we're about 30 miles up in the air. Some of you feel it's further than that. But here is the Temple Mount with the dome on the rock. And what you can see on this picture is there's a little tongue down here with a deep valley. This valley is the Hinnom Valley, or Kidron Valley, excuse me. Right here is the Mount of Olives. It doesn't look like a mountain, but we're 2 miles up in an airplane. This is the Mount of Olives. We'll stand there and look at this. Most pictures are taken there. And this is the Kidron Valley, really deep valley, and it comes down to the Hinnom Valley where Judas hung himself. And then you have a Cheesemaker Valley up there too. But this is topography. So this little tongue right here is the original city of David. And they're excavating that, and they have found David's palace as of 5 years ago. Because Muslims have denied David even existed. And I love how archaeology does this. They found a plaque that proved that David existed. People have been mocking it for years, saying he never existed, Jews don't own that. Well, David, they found a plaque that proving David did exist, and now they're excavating his palace. Obviously, the Muslims don't want it. They don't like archaeology because it proves that this one's, or the Jewish people have deep roots here. They would like to say the Jewish people have no rights there.
When was the dome built?
What? This is built around 1600 by the king of Jordan as a kind of to honor Muslims, because Muslims control this platform. This is when Israel conquered the city in 1967 and reunited Jerusalem from East and West Jerusalem, because remember, Jews could not come there. They owned the western part of the city, but it was a divided city. In the 67 war, when the Muslims came against them, and a 6-day war, if you want to read a book, read the 6-day war, against all odds, against everything, they totally wiped out Egypt, Jordan, so wiped out all the Muslim nations coming against them with their superior military power, and in 6 days ended a war, and that's when they got the West Bank and reunited Jerusalem. Now, they call that the Great Day of Celebration. The Jewish people call that, was it Nakba? It means catastrophe day. But it was united. So, but when Shimon, I think it's Shimon, was the one. Am I right on that? I think he's the president. When he came in and they conquered and got the city united, Jerusalem, for the first time Jews were able to go to the Wailing Wall to worship there, to wail. When that city was united, there's such an uprising in their world. So Shimon said, to please the Muslims, I will let them control the Temple Mount, the top. That was the biggest mistake ever could have been made. So it's controlled by the Waqf, they call it, out of Jordan, but the Muslims control this top, and that's why I want to take you up there. We're going to, the best chance to get up there, but sometimes if the tensions get high, we don't go. but there's only once that I've not been able to get up there. But we have to plan it way in advance. We have to go through tight security. You can't take Bibles up there because they don't let you read the Bible. They don't let you pray. You can't do any expression of faith because that begins Allah and they control it. But we go up there. That's the Temple Mount up on top.
Where is it on the map,
Moriah, and this is, we'll come to this in a little bit, but Moriah is right underneath here. That's why this is such a sacred place. Because when the Dome of Rock is built, and where most people think that the Holy of Holies sat right over, there's a rock. I've been in here, you can't get in there now. There's a rock in the middle of this. That's where Abraham offered up Isaac. Most people believe. The spot. And it's where the Holy of Holies and the temple would have been, right on this spot.
Can't you see the place where the ark sat, carved into that stone?
Some would argue that, yes, that's a good possibility. I've seen it. It's debatable in my limited knowledge, but some would argue that. Personally, and this is another whole thing, I'll hold that off a little bit. I don't think it's right here. I think it's right over here, a little tomb called the Dome of the Spirits. Because there's another bedrock above the ground there. And there's a number of reasons why we'll point that out. If I don't get to it tonight, we'll get to it when over there. And this is major speculation that one of the peace treaties that could be signed is when Russia comes down and the Arabs get demolished by an eruption in the Golan Heights, and they say, we got to settle peace because the God of Israel is the God of the world, and they decide to sign a peace treaty. I think they're going to say, we'll let you build a temple here, and we're going to keep here, and we'll have peace on the Temple Mount. And everybody will be saying, peace, peace. And they can do what they want to do, offer sacrifice, which they've been longing to do for 2,000 years, to offer sacrifice. There's a third temple institute. Some of you on your break would go to it. They've got all the robes. They got all the gold instruments. They're training Levite priests down in the Jericho area where they were trained before. They got everything ready for the third temple to be built. And it could be built overnight because they can have a temporary temple and then grow it. And because they desperately want a temple to offer sacrifice because they have no atonement for sins without it. And so the whole conflict of the world is centered on this spot right up here.
And that is right above the pink spot?
It's right up here, yeah. Here's this whole area is a Temple Mount. Now there's a difference between the temple. This is where I think the temple was. But this is called the Temple Mount, okay? And you got to distinguish between the two. The Temple Mount is the platform built by Herod. This was not this big in the days of Solomon because it was a mountain where, we offered up. And then Solomon built a beautiful temple there. But then Herod expanded this. It was a great business decision because you could put 1 million Jews up there and charge them tax to go up there. And that's what he did. But he pacified them and he expanded the temple on this Temple Mount. So you got this platform called the Temple Mount, and then the Dome of Rock was where the temple used to stand. Okay? And so, we'll keep going on that, okay, because I'll show you some more pictures. Now, this is in the time of Jesus, okay? Again, there's another map, but I just want to notice the city of David, the tongue, the Temple Mount, built by Herod the Great, expanded by Herod the Great, and this thing's incredible. Then you got the new city, and this is a great map, but it'll make a lot more sense when you walk it and you get over there. This is the old city, will be in the upper room, but this was the time of Jesus, where Jesus' whole crucifixion took place in this area, okay? And so that's another map you can look at. Now, this is another map I just want to show you. There are 4 quarters. We're going to walk through the old city. We'll have so much fun in there, and we'll try hard not to lose anybody in the old city because it's so packed, so crowded. But I always tithe 10% of anybody who goes with me, so I can leave you get there. But there are 4 quarters. Maybe you've heard about this. You've got the Armenian quarter, you've got the Christian quarter, you've got the Jewish quarter, and then you got the Muslim quarter. Most people don't know this, but there are 800,000 Muslims that live very peacefully in Israel. And they're Israeli Arabs. Because they didn't leave when Israel conquered, so they're a citizen of Israel. They vote. There's Arabs in the Knesset, 2 of them. And just look at the logic of that. Now again, I don't want to show too much bias here, but you've got Arabs living peacefully and prosperously in the land of Israel. There'll be all kinds of, Bob can help me here. What's their tower?
Minaret.
Minaret. All kinds of minarets here. Now they did not let them have a minaret bigger than a couple strategic places because they always, by having it bigger, means they're conquering or they're over somebody. But there's minarets all that. You'll hear the Muslim call to prayer all the time in Jerusalem. They allow peace. They can exercise their faith. This is a democracy.
Where's the Mosque of Omar? Is that on the Temple Mount?
Yeah, that's Al-Aqsa Mosque of Omar. It's right down here. Okay? And that is massive. They can put 400,000 Arabs in there. Underneath is what's called Solomon's Stables. And I'll show you another picture in here a little bit, but it's a massive. This is 35 acres up in this thing. You can put 1 million people up there, 3/4 of a million.
You said the Church of St. Anne is in the Muslim quarter.
What's that?
Why is it, so in the Muslim quarters, there's a Church of St. Anne?
Yeah, because that was from years back.